Okay.
Sweet.
This is new for me.
Is it?
Yeah, this is
How
the pilot.
so?
You're the pilot.
Oh
Oh,
shoot, that's awesome. I didn't even know.
yeah.
Now this got to be the best one,
This has
right?
to be the
Like,
best one.
oh no.
So we got my good friend, comrade,
Bro,
wizard.
from way back.
He knew me before I knew myself.
Oh, dude, I don't know about that. You already had a good sense of yourself, man.
Not in high school.
Oh, it
Yeah,
seemed like it, man. It was like, he's figuring it out, but he's going somewhere. I wasn't worried,
somewhere,
man. I wasn't
somewhere.
worried.
But this is the Jason
You're
Jones.
very kind. Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. And real quick, let's just get a bit to your musical background and
Sure. Shoot, man. Like, what else is there to tell? Like, I was classically trained with piano since I was like five all the way up until I was like maybe like 12.
Mhm.
And then I was just like, I don't like practice, so I stopped doing that. And then like, I don't know, you know how it is when you're like black and talented. Obviously, the very first people that come and pick you up from anywhere is the black church. So obviously got some chops there. Um, I don't know, man. Like I can't really say, like I would be here if it were not for the musical genius and guidance of Dr. Roosevelt Griffin
the
and
goat.
of course, the Dr. Eanes. Like there's
They
no way. There's no way I would be anywhere. I would like listen to music the same way, interpret it the same way. Yeah, so like under their guidance, under their leadership, I'll say even years after high school into college, like that was my job, right? Like
Mhm.
I would come home and like, hey, Dr. G, Dr. Eanes, what y'all got for me? Like,
Yeah.
what we gonna do? Like, and it was just always this thing where I built less of I'll say a mentor and mentee kind of relationship and much more of things that were almost familial. And
Mhm.
I appreciated that so greatly because just in music alone, they poured their wealth, right? And
Yeah.
of course, obviously in life too. I mean,
Yeah.
like, man, Mr. Eames definitely hit me in my chest at least once. So, I'm just saying, just saying.
You was intense.
But I mean, I needed that. I needed that. I didn't even know I needed it, and then it came, and I was like, "Oh shoot, I needed that." And now my life is on the right track. So, yeah, man. Like, I don't know. Ever since then, like, no, I'll take it back. Before I had always known that I'd listen to music differently, and I
Mhm.
didn't really know how to express that or even how to be comfortable with that within my own self.
Yeah.
And so they kind of helped me navigate like, well, this is how music goes. And so all that was left was just reconciling how music is and my feelings, right? And
Right.
so that's kind of all I really try to do nowadays. And so I really find joy um in making music as though it's a conversation
Mm.
and to just have it as though it is just someone who's in front of you just simply saying, "Hey, here's my day," right? Or here's my life, or here's what I'm feeling right now. And I don't know. I like the interpretive side of music. So yeah.
Yeah. You said just a moment ago when you're reconciling pretty much what music is and your feelings. Can you
Mhm.
get into that for me, please?
So like, I don't know, especially being like in the gospel industry, and being like trained up in music and all that stuff, there's kind of this way that people tend to guide the
Mhm.
way that your life trajectory is supposed to go,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like you're in music, so if you don't make it, then you're just gonna be a band director, right? Like, and it just kind of seemed like the the trained thought or like
They do it
anything
before you
else.
even have a chance to make it.
Man, and it's like I didn't even know. I was like, it's like, am I doomed to be this way? And so, you know, I would always watch these other artists that are out there, and I would be so curious as to how they could just forsake all the technicalities of music that I
Yeah.
was just full of and just create just authentic thought and put it into their music. And so I guess I don't know, for the longest of time, it took me a long time to figure out that they're just really just kind of talking, right? They're just kind of really taking whatever they feel or whatever they see and they just express just that.
Mhm,
It's not that they're chalking through all of these notes and all of these melodies and this sounds the best. It's like, no, this is just my authentic feeling.
mhm,
And here you go. Right? Like it's the best way that I can describe the world. So, um, when I've finally clicked into that,
mhm.
like things like, Broadway musicals were like no-brainers because it was like, "Oh, this is what I've been looking for all this time, just this expressive and yet technical kind of composition." Disney music, I love Disney
Yeah,
music because it's like, dude, it's the perfect meld of, honest, sincere, and concise thought, while still putting clever rhetorical strategies all
and
into
finesse.
entwined in a melody that we
Yeah.
all love. So, yeah, that's what I aim for my music to be like, right? It's a thing that's not just heard, but it's music to, or I should say, it's language to communicate between souls.
Oh, yeah,
So.
that's well, you figured it out a lot earlier than a lot of people do.
I mean, shoot, I don't know, man. I'm looking at my age and I'm like, ooh, I figured it out pretty late. But, the way I see it is like, as long as you have something to offer
Mhm.
another soul, then it's never too late,
Right.
And like, I feel like so much of the world has just kind of put this clock on us. But, as long as there's a
It's
lesson to be
it's just the
learned,
internet. It's
it's
just the
just
internet.
everybody.
It's just the internet. It's just the internet being internet, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, man, like,
That's great.
soul to soul, that's all.
So, from when you started writing,
Mhm.
what was that journey like to getting to this point where you're at now then?
Shoot, man, it was rough.
Well,
That's what it was.
it had to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, when I would first start writing music, it was always defined in this little box because
Mhm.
that's what I had learned, right? Like jazz music, gospel music, pop music, you can pick a show tune genre, right? Like any genre period, I was full of all of these things, but they all felt like they were all a restrictive box for me. And I was like, I don't want to be in a box, right?
Mhm.
And so I guess when I was first learning to write, I was really just kind of breaking myself out of that box.
Right.
I had a lot of feelings and a lot of things that I wanted to say, and I wasn't really good at putting those actually into words. Um, and so, I stopped, honestly, I stopped just kind of writing, right? And I
Mm.
just started talking whatever I felt. And I was like, oh, well, I speak in fortune cookies, so I might as well I might as well just, keep talking and just record it or something and
Yeah.
then come back over it, put a melody to it, and it just felt much more authentic that way to me. But it took me a long time to figure that out. So,
I mean,
yeah,
it's a process of self-discovery. You
it really
literally had a
is.
process of
It
self-discovery.
really is. It's been an amazing journey, I will say, and the more that I dive into it, the more I feel myself not just healing, but myself becoming more aware, myself being more content, myself discovering things that I didn't really know. I was like, "Oh, shoot, I really do feel these things, huh?" So, I feel like writing is the way that I discover and connect with myself. And, as long as I can communicate that to somebody else, then, you know, I've done the service of humanity,
Right.
right?
Let's get in a bit into a bit more of just balancing like the technical like the toolbox with
Sure.
like your feelings and like how do your how let me say this in a way that makes sense. How did you work on translating your tools
Mhm.
into okay, this gets this feeling from me.
Yeah.
And if I feel this, maybe somebody else feels like this when they hear this thing. And like
Sure.
right, making those connections.
Yeah, so at least for me, the first thing I had to do is throw the tools away,
Hmm.
right? Theory does not make the music.
Hmm.
Music is literally just defined by the theory,
Yeah, it comes
right?
after.
Like, and I feel like for me, And I'm sure many other aspiring musicians and artists, they feel the same way as I'm so full of theory,
Mhm.
right, that it's very hard for me to make music. So the very first thing I did was throw all that away, right?
Mhm.
Like, and really listened into things that um people were doing. Like I said, I'm really huge in onto Disney music, but not even just their lyrical music,
Mhm.
but the way that they score and things like that. One of my favorite compositions is Romantic Flight from How to Train Your Dragon. Right, but, like, it's something about how they use strings to paint clouds, and they make you feel like you're soaring.
Mhm.
So instead of using somebody else's theory and somebody else's terms, I listen to these things for my own self, and I define for myself, like, what does this feel like? I'll take a random song and say, what do I see?
Mhm.
Like, listen to it, don't use any other context. What do you see? And how did they paint this picture with sound?
Mm.
And so I inevitably just try to do just that, right? I don't know the tool that I'm going to use until I've mastered the feeling.
Right.
And once I've mastered that feeling and I know like, well, I want it to feel sad or I want it to feel uppity or I want it to feel like I'm sitting on a lake
Mhm.
where there's moving water, then the tools come into mind
Right.
because,
It's just a
again, the best way that I can describe it is you're just painting a picture with the sounds,
Mhm.
right? And if you are able to achieve that, then you'll feel for the tool, right?
Right.
You'll see that a screwdriver probably isn't the best for hammering nails, right? So
You feel me?
yeah, so at the end of the day, it's all subjective anyway, so you might as well be an artist.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, look. Um, so I'm gonna say a concise summary of what you just said back to you.
Sure.
Just make sure I understood it
Oh
clearly.
yeah.
So like one of the key part of like making those connections between your toolbox
Mhm.
and like getting the feelings you want from sound. Well, after you threw out the tools, just imagine that toolbox in my garage. You just threw it out in the
Yeah,
driveway,
pretty much.
and then you focus on like a visual emotional connection
Absolutely.
and like actually that's a way to think about like producing music just like on the uh sonic landscape instead of just like the musical concept of the
Absolutely.
song that
Mhm.
producers will think like if this song was a movie what would be happening what kind of
Absolutely.
scene would it be
Yeah.
and then then I would just help the artist get to that scene
Yeah, I
right
feel like a lot of people just kinda discount that because they're trying to make the next hit. Like, the
mm-hmm
internet has made us so sick on, like, these hits just out of everywhere, from everybody's country, with everything. But honestly, what feels good will always be the hit, right? So, like, if you make a feeling, if you create a moment,
mm-hmm
right, and you stay authentic to that moment, right, then it'll always come out the way that it's intended, right?
yeah
As long as you create the feeling and stay true to that, then, it doesn't matter, right?
mm-hmm
Like, I don't know, the James Brown said, "That's not a saxophone, that's a drum."
it's a drum
Exactly. So, like the exact same concept, right? It's
yeah
it's not about it's not about the instrument that you have in your hand.
mm-hmm.
It's all about what is the feeling you're trying to create. And if it's funky, if it's jazzy, if it's soaring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like master what you want to paint and
Mm-hmm.
then paint.
Let's talk about what you're working on right now, though. Like, well, what you
Oh
can
shoot,
disclose
man.
about it at this current
Yeah,
time.
so honestly, I don't mind sharing. This is a little bit of a passion project for me.
Mhm,
I have been recently kind of just been going through, some deep emotional things. And I've been kind of in and out of like this weird depressive kind of state. Um, but I realized something that it's not just me,
mhm,
right? It's not just me that's experiencing this. It's a collective of us, right? Almost globally. We're all experiencing this. It's this weird little time after the pandemic that we're supposed to be normalizing, but we don't really know what that looks like anymore because the world has shown us our values.
mhm,
And so, when we're going back and trying to apply those values, we don't know what to do. And so for me, especially already as an entrepreneur, it was very difficult now adjusting to, when the world had dropped me, right?
Mhm.
Like, and even more so, when I was getting back in the groove of a bunch of things just weren't panning out. And so I got really dark, man. And so like in April, I had a breaking point.
Mm.
And, honestly, the first thing that I thought of was like, yo, I'm low. What do I do? And honestly, I picked up my phone and I heard this melody in my head. I went to sleep and I literally had a dream about this melody, right?
So
Like,
the melodies that come to you in your dreams, buddy.
man,
Though
like
the
you never let those go. You wake up, it doesn't matter how early you wake up, you voice memo that thing and you take that thing because that is genuine or unfiltered thought. Take it, use it, right? So
right.
it came to me and I just I don't know, I just kind of heard this swelling thing because that's how my feelings were. It was
Mhm.
like these giant waves of up and down stuff. So I don't know, man. I just from that moment, I'd spent it was a Friday that I went to bed, and I woke up Saturday morning, and I saw some videos from what I did the night before at the gig, and it just wasn't a really good gig.
Mhm.
And I just took to writing, and I was
Mm.
like, my prayers that I see that light to find my way back, and this was a bad night. It won't last for all times. If storms pass by sunrise, I'll be all right. Right.
Shoo, shoo,
So, like,
shoo.
yeah, man. So like it just kind of happened.
Uh-huh.
And from that moment on, I really kind of ventured into this whole thing about how deep these feelings really went.
Mhm.
And I ended up entitling the song 988 because it seems like after the pandemic, there's another silent epidemic happening where it's a bunch of people just kind of committing suicide these days.
Mm.
And I don't know, like even while we were doing these doing the prep for the project and whatnot, and we were going over stories, it just seemed like this thing that was just kind of like silently being ignored, and we would
Mm.
pass by billboards on 294 that say 14,000 people a year. And it's like, okay, all right, well, I still got to get to work, right? Like, and so like for me, I as someone that had now been feeling these things, I was
Mhm.
like, why do I feel alone? And why is it that all the rest of these things and all of these other people, they seem like they don't notice?
Mm.
And so like that's pretty much what 988 is all about, man. Like it's the idea that, it is it's the thing that we all pass by every day,
Yeah.
right? It's the people that we see smiling every single day, right? And it's not that we don't care, it's just that we're not present with them,
Yeah.
right? And we're not that invested as to where we recognize,
Mhm.
like, well, you're going through. Well, you're not going through alone. I'm going through too,
Yeah, yeah.
and so like that's kind of what 988 is all about. It's really shocking in its imagery. It's really shocking in how it
Uh,
goes.
yeah.
But it's really just kind of what happens if somebody makes it all the way to the precipice,
Mhm.
right? What happens when somebody makes it all to the decision, right? And that's pretty much the picture that I'm painting.
Mhm.
Um, and it is going to be very dark. I will throw
I
that
mean, I
disclaimer
was
out.
there.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I'm
It
just
was
saying for all the people that have that aren't there, but they hopefully will see it. Hopefully will hear it. Um, it is very dark, but
Mhm.
it is a call to not just be in close proximity.
Mm.
It is a call to be in relationship and be present with people because you don't know where people are until you know
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah.
people are. So yeah, that's kind of what the project is about. I'm gonna be releasing that in September. It's gonna
Mhm.
be 5 videos that just kind of take the viewers through kind of where my mind is and
Mhm.
kind of where my mind was, especially through these, I'll call them valleys of the year.
I got you.
So yeah.
Um, that is well, people will find out how intense it was.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. We did some crazy things.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, I
Um,
know.
so with like writing from that very like that low and vulnerable place,
Yeah.
did it come natural to you to like just like what musically everything that was going to happen, or did you find points where like, oh, I'm a bit I hit a bit of a stump,
Mhm,
and now you're just trying to maintain that creativity and objectivity
mhm.
without losing the core feeling that you're going for?
Yeah,
How was that
so
process?
the way that I see it is, I wrote this kind of, oh, this is gonna sound so terrible. I wrote this in the waves of all of my depression feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't really have to focus in on too much of the creativity because I was just being honest,
Yeah,
and that in and of itself was very angering and yet liberating
I got
because
you.
it's like, how can't you see this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's this kind of weird perception that the world has where everybody owes you this last warning,
Mm,
but every single day is a warning, right?
right.
Like everybody is constantly saying, hey, this is what I think and this is what I feel. And
Mm-hmm.
all you have to do is just master the language of that person,
Yeah.
right? And they will tell you absolutely everything you want to know. And so, I guess what was most challenging for me is not just writing my honesty,
Mm-hmm.
but writing it from a very broad perspective
Mm-hmm.
of I am not just writing this for me, but
Right.
I am embodying everybody that feels this way. How can I tell you I'm suicidal? Right? Like that's literally the opening of the fourth act. How can I tell you when all you'll say is you'll be all right. You're joking, right? You'll make it my fault, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and those are the most honest things I possibly could have said, because that's how we constantly confront these issues.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't mean any harm by it,
Right.
but we don't know the harm that it's causing because we're literally just telling this person, well, find your hope, but they don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They don't have any left. They've gone through the solutions. They wouldn't be saying this now at this
Mm-hmm.
point if they did not try. So, like I I guess I wrote from a very honest place, and it wasn't just like a one day thing,
No.
and so, I feel like a lot of people treat depression as though it's this thing that can be medicated like a common cold and then it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Or even worse, people will hear the word depression and automatically equivocate it with attention seeking, right?
Right.
And it's not necessarily that. It's just I'm low when I'm low, and when I'm not, I'm high. Great, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at any given time, anything can trigger those highs and lows, right?
Right.
Like, and so if I'm in the mountains, great,
Yeah.
and you'll see me, right? And I'll be just as animated as anybody else. And if I'm low, then maybe you won't, right? I feel
Yeah.
like a classic example of this is Robin Williams. So, you know.
Yeah, I got you. That was very impassioned. And it seemed like despite like not to like disregard your struggles and what you're trying to
Absolutely.
say, but it's like just like for the clarity,
Yeah.
the muse and the message possessed you,
Hmm.
and like you were already prepared to write it.
Yep.
You just didn't get in the way of yourself. You were being honest.
Absolutely.
Intermediate to advanced writer,
Hmm.
you're able to develop your skills enough where you don't have to think about them.
I would even go so far as to say, especially for younger writers,
Mm-hmm.
or I should say, writers that are starting out, um, do not be afraid to be honest,
Right.
right? Like what you're writing is not corny, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you're writing is not cheap. It's not weird. It's not cliche. It's how you honestly felt,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think so often people run into cliches and being cheesy when they are trying to be overly deep, right? And
Yeah.
like we can see TikToks full of that, right?
Mm.
Like everybody's duet is like, if the stars and if this is the last. And I was like, well, this is me today. How's it going? Right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
that's much more authentic.
Yeah, yeah.
And especially for writers starting out, I would challenge you, before you do anything else, before you study rhetorical strategies, before you study literature or any poem, just be authentic. Just say whatever is on your face and
Mhm.
on your heart and on your sleeve. Write those first, and then you can make it pretty. You can make it into whatever else, right? Make it more descriptive, make it more rhetorical, fine. But
Mhm.
say what you mean.
And mean what you say.
Oh, yes. Kanye West said it best. He says, "Say it out loud, see how it feels."
Yeah.
And that's exactly how you have to do, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think I think that's, like, something that's more so just what you have to live with being until
Mhm.
it, like, becomes natural.
Yeah.
Um, my professor, the saxophone professor at, Northern Illinois University, Jeff Bradfield, he was giving me this advice right around when I was about to graduate.
Yeah.
He was just telling me a story about how he had to learn to accept parts of him that inspired him musically and just, like,
Yeah.
let him be him
Yes.
instead of just what the other musicians think or what people are looking for you towards or people are looking towards you for
Yeah. Absolutely.
and what the market's looking for.
Absolutely. I feel like so many people get caught up in trying to be like something else.
Mhm.
But the way that I am is it's unique,
Right.
right? Like my fingerprints aren't the same as your fingerprints, nor anybody else's on the face of the earth. Why should my music be that way?
Right.
Right? Like, and as such, obviously people will always have preference,
Mhm.
but if I like it, 9 times out of 10, there's at least one other on this 8 billion populated world. Like, come on now. Like there's
Yeah.
there's at least one other person.
Yeah.
And like for me with my own project with 988,
Mhm.
I'm not expecting a lot of people to like it. What I am hoping is that I'm hoping honestly a lot of people don't like it. I'm really hoping
You're hoping to
that
get the message out there.
I'm really hoping that somebody feels like they're acknowledged and that they're not alone.
Mhm.
Like that really is my goal. And as such, I would say this to any other artist. The goal is not it's not to be popular, it's
Right.
to connect.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, then you are an artist. You have succeeded the highest levels of success, right? As an
Mhm.
artist, as long as I've communicated soul to soul, then I've done my job. And now you can always refine how good you go about doing that, how well in comparison to, your previous self, because we don't
Mhm.
compete against other artists. We compete with ourselves. So as long as you're better than yesterday's writer, then you're succeeding,
Mm.
right? Like, and that's okay. So, as long as the goal is always to be present with someone else and to connect with someone else and to make someone feel as though you're right next to them, talking right to them, then that's what art is for.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. Love that. A lot of people need to hear that.
yeah, man,
Put
like
that on a
it's
bill, put that on a shirt.
I'm gonna do my best to, man. Monetization is a thing. Trying to get hungry over here. I need a cheeseburger.
Not a cheeseburger.
I'm
Oh,
just saying, man.
yeah, you don't want to be a starving artist.
You
Just
got to stand on your own music. That's what I'm saying.
yeah, yes, sir. What are some other lessons that you think were important
As
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 a
a writer, as an
yes?
artist, as what?
What are you feeling?
Oh shoot, man! Like, don't drink out of the same gallon that you pour the cereal from. Oh, I don't know, man. Anyway, I think other once you've unlocked authenticity, chase after um what feels I should say what locks into the groove, right?
Mhm.
Like I feel like so many people um you know, they just kind of like put together a track, or they, I don't know, steal somebody else's like pre-made tracks, and that's like, but experiment,
Hmm.
like do something that is weird to you, right? Like chase after, in every sense, expansion of oneself, expansion
Hmm.
of one's mind, expansion of one's sound. Um, because like, especially as artists, we get very proud of the thing that we make,
Hmm.
and we hang on to that. But as just like any other thing, we should be growing in this,
Hmm.
right? Like, the best thing that I could say is, like, if it's your best work, make it not your best work.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that does not come by trying to emulate your best work,
Hmm.
or trying to redo that thing, trying to recreate the magic. You are the magic,
Hmm.
right? Like, so go out there and Houdini again, right? Like, and believe in yourself enough that you can do it again, and that you will do it again, and just
You have to
try.
have the audacity every day, every day to come
Man,
up.
man, and that's a hard lesson all by
Yeah.
itself, right? And like, being confident in yourself is a completely separate beast than being confident in your artistry, right?
Yeah.
Because people can tell you, no, I don't like that, right?
Right.
Like, and I don't know. I feel like once you've mastered it within yourself, like, I feel like a lot of people just kind of like brush it off. Okay, well, yeah, this is me. I'm not changing. But we don't apply that same thing to our art, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and because it's the most sincere form of our expression, right? Like,
Hmm.
just me being out here, okay, well, I flexed a little bit. I did some push-ups before I went out, put on some glasses. All right, cool. You don't like me? I'm not worried, right? Somebody will. But art is the most sincere thing that we've got, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's the
Yeah.
most sensitive thing that we can possibly put forth. So, when somebody says, "I don't like your artistry,"
Like getting punched
you
in the throat.
saying you don't like me as an entirety,
Yeah.
right? Like,
It's
so
it's personal.
it really is, right? So I would say, not just even having the audacity, but um love your art enough to where, if no one else loves it,
Hmm.
then you are still pursuing it. You are still doing it, right? Because it really doesn't matter. It's not a popularity contest,
Right.
It all kind of goes back to the same thing. You're not comparing yourself. And that's a hard lesson all by itself, whether music or otherwise, right? You're not comparing yourself. You're trying to connect. And as long as you stay authentic to that, and you break out of your box, right?
Hmm.
Like, and you're constantly trying to improve, you know, those two things, they go hand in hand. Those are the building blocks of artistry. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
That's fantastic. I did lose my train of thought again. I
It's all
was
right,
you
man.
got you
It's
pulled
all
me
right.
in. You pulled me in. I was like, I'm just listening to this man right now.
I mean,
I
try to
remember
share what I know.
you're sharing right. All right. What I actually so it's a bit of a left turn and a skip.
Hit me with it.
So like I know you've done some co-writing, right?
Yes.
With your band Black Glove.
I've done Black Glove, I've done, Zeke Lock and the New Experience, I've done,
Oh
oh,
yeah, you
shoot,
did.
I've done some stuff with a group in LA, Jesus.
You've
I
done
kinda been
enough.
around,
You've
man.
been
I've been around. It's
like a
like,
busy bee.
you got to,
You
you
gotta
got to.
pollinate.
I mean, is if I've learned one thing in the music industry, it's all about who you know, and it very much so is, once you're in the door with who you know,
Hmm.
what can you do?
Right,
Right? And
right,
if you
right.
can't do anything,
That's
then
the
they about to
second
kick you
question.
out,
That's the second
right?
question.
Like, so, you
People are a
know,
lot very very concerned with the second question.
yeah,
They miss.
you have to bring your caliber. You have to bring your caliber. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've done all kinds of random little tidbits with various things and people.
Hmm. What
Um,
effect do you think has it had on you as a writer?
I think so the way that I write, and the way that I do anything,
Hmm.
whether it's composing, whether it's arranging, or and that can be for artists, films, whomever, it doesn't matter. I am constantly expanding myself,
Hmm.
right? And so I approach I don't know, composing the exact same way I approach my artistry, right?
Mhm.
And it's not so much of, it's not so much that I am trying to be so technical or draw out of somebody,
Mhm.
what I want to hear. It's how do we take our two arts or three arts or whomever, and how do we make the most authentic feeling thing
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
possible? There was I don't know. I did a whole little thing with Z Glock and the New Experience. I'm
Mhm.
walking. That was a gospel thing. It was very different than the composition that I wrote behind. There's a song called No Name, No Dash Name. It's by Kayla Alexis. The composition is very, very different. It feels much more like a movie score than anything else.
Mhm.
But it really, my goal between these two things was how do we become the most authentic of ourselves? And I'm not going to shortchange myself. I'm not going to hide myself. I'm not going to try to do what's popular. I'm going to just try to bring out my most authentic self. And these are some tricks and things that I've used in other projects.
Mhm.
These are some tricks and some things that I've used in other writings. Let's bring all of that together and in
Mm.
some kind of way, shape, or form, whether it's stealing a melody that I sang and making a flute play it, or like, I don't know, taking an oboe line and now singing that with, whatever verse I'm doing, you know, explore and not just create music to be segregated and compartmentalized. It's
Mm.
all a part of me.
Right.
Right. And so, as such, I'm constantly learning and constantly developing what I can do with me, the instrument, Jason, the instrument.
Mm. I
So,
appreciate that. I appreciate that. Um, so you talked about like, that's actually good with your experience and how's it affected you. All right, how do you approach being a good co-write? He's like because some people get into co-writing is like it's the me, myself, and I,
yeah.
y'all in
Yeah.
commas.
I get that. I get that. So I will say there has to be there has to be a certain level of dog in you. Right? Like there's gotta be an animal in you, right? Like because it doesn't matter where you put me, what you put me on. I don't care whose first verse was as fire as it came. I came to chop some heads.
Mhm.
So like that's just how it goes. But
Mhm.
that's a learned confidence,
Yep.
right? That's a hone thing. So when I'm approaching co-write, I approach it the exact same kind of way. Okay, what kind of feeling are we attempting to go for?
Mhm.
And what kind of perspective are we looking for this to be from?
Mhm.
As far as lyricists go, what I try to listen for is, I guess, temperature.
Mhm.
I try to listen for perspective, and I try to listen for atmosphere. And what I
Okay.
mean by
Clear. Okay.
temperature is yeah. What I mean by temperature is like how intense are we going with
Mhm.
this, right? Like if we're just kind of relaxed and like lo-fi writing, okay, all right, well then say something that is gritty that makes people think, right? But not something that is so cryptic that it's like it just goes right over their heads,
Mhm.
right? Or if we're doing something that's much more technical, then like unleash the hounds of war, right? Like it is what it is, you know? Um, and so, obviously perspective speaks for itself. Like, am I trying to address somebody directly? Is it something that's much more from a third person?
Mhm.
Just usual like rhetorical strategies.
Mhm.
And I would really encourage people to like look at poetry, look
Mhm.
at
Yep.
like any piece of literature that has really good rhetorical strategies in it. Plays, and this is where I absolutely harp on Broadway musicals and whatnot for being genius at,
Mhm.
because the rhetorical strategies within that and the perspectives that they write from, they're absolutely genius. So study your perspectives. And then oh shoot, I forgot my third one. I forgot.
Dang. Hold on a
Oh,
second.
I don't remember. I
It was
don't
so wait.
remember.
Temperature,
It was temperature,
perspective.
perspective, and then oh shoot, I don't even remember. I don't even remember. But yeah, doesn't matter. Look for that third one. Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe I'll remember it at some point, but
okay.
yeah,
This
like it really just kind of atmosphere.
right, 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 right.
So it really all kind of comes back down to what kind of mode am I trying to set?
Mm,
What am I going to add to this song that better communicates the
mhm.
entirety of the message, right? Because if I come in like I don't know, talking about diced pineapples in the middle of a song that's like literally a nursery rhyme, it could fit, but it probably won't, right?
You're
Because
taking a
yeah,
chance.
I mean, it's all about, how cohesive the end objective really ends up being.
Mm.
So, with those three perspectives in mind, I walk in, just get my coffee and my best pen
Coffee, best pen. I
and be
like
ready
that.
for fortune cookies.
You speak in fortune cookies.
I mean, I've been told that my entire life. So,
Yeah, yeah.
it's okay. I've made it a part of my identity,
No,
and
I'm just.
honestly, it's really kind of made me a better writer for it because it's like imagery
I
and
mean,
perspective. Like I love that stuff. I eat it up. Lil Wayne is like he's the most genius writer I've ever listened to in my life.
mhm.
So like if I'm aspiring to anything, it's probably Wayne's flow with the with the musical genius of Stephen Sondheim. He's like really, really, really big in the musical theater.
Yo. First, like the fact that that sentence you was just said. See, this is why I said I feel like you're about to come up on a new genre.
Hey man, like I just like good music, and so if a genre births out of it, then hey, I think though if I were to name a genre, it'd be black music, BLAQ, black music.
I actually haven't heard that term before.
Exactly. Exactly. Coined right here. Timestamp that mug.
um, actually, can we touch on like your main influences then? Like, and it could be in
Influences.
phases if you want.
Yeah. Shoot, man. Like I don't even know where to start with that. Like I feel like I engross so much music that it
It's starting to
doesn't,
just become in
I
licks.
mean, yeah, it's just a giant blur of just like people that it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna do something like this person at this point.
Wh-
I will say the people that I am currently listening to
Mm,
is I love me some Peter Collins, man. Like it's just something about the way that he like goes about attacking and approaching his music.
I'm going to check him out.
Oh yes, please, please do. Please, please do. But my man's vocal technique is absolutely incredible. Really huge on like social media and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But I have appreciated very technical singing with very, very easy to listen to melodies and lyrics.
Mm.
And it just kind of all his sound is just so warm and encompassing. He has this one song, "You've Got This." Oh, it's so good. So warm. It's just like a giant sonic hug. But yeah, I would say he's definitely one of my big influences right now just because I'm trying to step away from more technical arrangements. Try to make my background music a little bit simpler. But honestly, I have to go right on back to Disney music right now because that's really what I'm trying to listen to as I am approaching the realm of film composition.
Hmm.
But even more so, it's changing how I approach things as an artist too,
Mm.
because the thing about an orchestra is that you only have so many instruments to paint a world with.
Yeah.
And as such, you can be very creative with all of these instruments in painting that world.
Hmm.
And so I don't know. For me, I feel like this has always been a world that has been too few and far between approached by black musicians and black composers. So
I feel like we can
I've
steal
thought,
it.
yeah, no,
We can
yeah,
steal it.
no. I think that's kind of the trajectory that I'm on right now. Is I would very much so love to aspire to be the next Lin Manuel Miranda, or very much so the next Hans Zimmer, and hopefully my lyrics compare to Alan Menken one day. Maybe I'll just have to turn 60, and that'll be the present I give to myself. Is like I finally wrote an Alan Menken worthy song, but. I would say those are probably my big influences right
Mhm.
now. And obviously I have to throw in John Williams, Star Wars. Oh, that
Right.
entire that entire score, bro. That entire score is genius. It's just so good. But yeah, I find myself these days listening much more to composers
Mhm.
more so than I do of lyricists. I feel like, especially being in Black culture, we're already privy to so many great lyricists that we don't really recognize as lyricists and or poets. We just call them rappers. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, rappers, they encompass a lot of that. It's
They
like
do.
they encompass a great deal of things. And
It's
I
it's
find myself.
overlooked due to subject matter.
Oh yeah, I would definitely say it's not even just subject matter. It's the entire.
Culture around it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's absolutely the entire connotation that comes along with
Mhm.
the idea of a rapper. Oh, I'm assuming that you're only gonna talk about these kinds of things, but that is that's the nucleus of
Yeah.
Black culture right there, right? Like it's the nucleus of our heart right there.
Mhm.
And so I feel that being raised around so much of that,
Mhm.
it's not that I'm not paying so much of attention to lyricism now because I definitely am.
Mhm.
It is more so that um it's more so that I'm trying to stretch myself in these other areas as well.
Mhm.
And lyrically, although I am not the best,
Mhm.
I am at level like 3 with composing.
Right.
So, gonna bring that up to at least
It's
a
like
7.
it's just a season right now.
Yeah, gonna bring that up at least to a point where I can now grow them together. And, yeah, I've been kind of moving along those
Mhm.
lines. I've done some work with, even some plays, doing some compositions for them.
Let's get into that. Like, what's different about approaching a play and maybe approaching a song for an artist? It's like, hey, I got 3 minutes and I'm gonna be ready to
Yeah,
go.
so I think it really kinda comes down to those 3 things that we were talking about earlier
Let me
is
see if I can remember them. We
yeah.
got atmosphere. I'm doing it
Oh,
backwards.
yeah, atmosphere,
We got a
perspective, and
temperature.
temperature. Oh,
I was like, you
yeah.
was helping me. I didn't want
Oh,
help.
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm
Look,
sorry.
guys, look. This is a comprehension test.
No, it's alright. I like it that people are listening, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I feel that, especially all the more when you have, plays and any theatrical piece, whether it's plays, films,
Hmm.
whatever. It really is heavy on that perspective. The first two that you mentioned, the atmosphere and perspective, right? Like you can get really gritty into the intensity of like how lyrically I'm gonna be, but really the thing is you now need to paint according to an image that's already set.
Right.
And for me, that's very helpful because a lot of the job is already done. I don't have to imagine what something would sound like. Although, it can be boxing a little bit with the creative flow, but I will say for me it's very nice to be in almost a collaborative kind of space where
Right.
the playwright is like, this is what I desire. I want it to feel like someone is they're on a boat,
Hmm.
right? And it has to sound like they're out on a yacht on a beach excursion or something. To me, already some thoughts come to mind just because I listen to music,
Hmm.
right? Like, and I'm sure like anybody else, we listen to music and we can all kind of hear the steel drums in the background and
Yeah.
or random metallic sounds and like percussion and all that stuff. And maybe it's guys strumming on a guitar, right? We feel all of these things innately. And so I guess when preparing a piece for a theater or a film, it's really just kind of taking that image
Hmm.
now and making the sound just match,
Right. Right.
right? All the feeling, all of the atmosphere, all of the intensity. Now I just need to match it according to what this is. And I really find joy in that because it leaves me a lot of freedom to then embellish and emphasize
Yeah.
within the scene.
You
Like,
can shape the story.
oh, absolutely. Like I love Looney Tunes for this. They do so well with this. Like taking a song like Blue Danube, right?
Mhm.
And making it so that it's tailored specifically to this episode of Bugs and what is it, Elmer?
Mhm.
Like it's genius, right? Like
Yeah.
how do we take this entire composition and we still give you the essence of that music and you still get the essence of whatever's happening on the cartoon screen, but you also get these little tidbits of bop, 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 right? Like all that random stuff that happens in the middle of the scene,
Mhm.
screaming horns and all that stuff. So I absolutely love scoring for that in and of itself. It's like taking the image, taking the sound, emphasizing one another with each. I think
That
that's the fun stuff about it.
that was lovely. I think artists everywhere can take a just just learn from that approach. Like you start with the story, you have the story
Yeah,
together, and now you're working backwards. Like, all right, how do I create this feeling? How
absolutely.
do I create the journey that somebody's going to go through?
Yeah.
What's going to happen in that journey?
Yeah. And not being afraid to emphasize or throw in things that could also be a part of the journey, right? Like throw in a random crash. Okay, well, now somebody had dropped something on somebody now, all right? Like in the
Right.
good old Looney Tunes cartoons, right?
It's
Like
like going through Chicago.
it
Sometimes you
feeds
hit a
off of
pothole.
exactly. It feeds off of itself in those realms, right? And I think that's the beauty of, really kind of being in those two spaces
Mhm.
because, as the visual director, he might like what he hears and say, "Okay, well, do some more of those things." And as the composer, I might be like, "Hey, well, these kind of feelings, this is what I'm hearing with those, and I think this would best, communicate this. What if we did something along those lines where, now you see rain instead of it just being a rain stick in the back.
Mhm.
I feel like, it's a cool space to be much more in a collaborative kind of workflow rather than just strictly being like, okay, only audio, only visual. It's much more fun because you get so many much more dimensions to paint and play around with. So,
Mm. Yeah, that's actually beautiful. It's actually looking forward to seeing. Well, I know we've talked about this
yeah.
before personally about like what interactive media is going to become in the next
Yeah.
few years. The last thing I want to touch on briefly,
Sure.
you self-produce your music too, in a certain extent,
I do.
and I want you to just like give your thoughts to, like artists who are self-producing and like how do they not fall off the horse during that harrowing
How do you
journey.
mean fall off the horse?
Horse.
Because I can fall off the horse in like a
Okay,
million and a
say
half
okay,
ways.
okay,
Like
okay. What I meant is like you fall like okay, you could fall off the horse, but like just getting knocked off too
okay.
long or permanently, I guess.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think before anything, you have to come to grips with yourself that artistry is entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
right? You are the business, right? Like that, there's no way around it,
Right.
right? And as such, if you are the business and you are the CEO and you are, the owner, right? You have to really love this business,
Yeah.
right? And even more so, you have to really love the impact of your business,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's kind of really the importance of it is, we get knocked off the horse so much as artists because it's like I'm not reaching anyone,
Mm.
right? Or I'm not doing things that are progressive enough, or I'm not in the spaces that I need to be in,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, but what if you took the mentality of you are exactly where you're supposed to be and that's okay, right? Like this is okay for now because it will not be always, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the trick to getting back up on the horse is getting back up on the horse even if you don't love it,
Mm.
you know? And it's not that you are not making waves or making moves or progressing. It's just that this is a season, you know? And just like all seasons, it passes. And there will come a time, right, that you do love this again, right? Um, I would tell any artist
Mm-hmm.
anything that makes you fall out of love with, the music, if it's like become a job, if it's become painful, if it's become toxic to you, breaks are healthy.
Yeah.
They are healthy.
Mhm.
Take them. You know,
Yeah.
take them, and it's okay because just like anything, you start missing it,
Yeah.
right? Like it's just like any other relationship. Just make sure you're not burnt out.
Mhm.
Like love it and love it enough to come back, right? You are a business, which means like if you stop, there's no money. Right? Like you probably don't want to do that. Right.
Right.
Like but I will say for those that are brave enough to come back, make sure that when you come back, that you're not burnt out, right? Like don't come back too soon. So that you end up back in the same predicament. But don't be afraid to get away. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to get away from it. So yeah, yeah, that's
Thank
pretty
you.
much it.
That's great. That's about all the time we had today.
Awesome.
Thank you.
No, thank you. It's
This
an
is
honor to be here.
numero uno.
Oh yes, the best. Kick it off with the best.
Hi.